Well, let's just spend a few moments generating a positive motivation first. Um, yeah, of course, this is a module on bodhicitta, so you can generate a bodhicitta motivation. That's best. Otherwise, whatever. But whatever motivation you generate, it should be authentic. So whatever works best for you. And think about why you're engaging in this session, both your short-term aspirations, your long-term aspirations, and then not only yourself, but also what you'd like to accomplish in terms of other sentient beings or other sentient beings. And then if you like, visualize a field of refuge in the space in front of you, Shakyamuni Buddha or any other field of refuge, and generate the mind of refuge in Buddha Dharma Sangha. And then we can recite Shakyamuni Buddha's name mantra, Hayata Omani Mani Mahamani Soha, 3 times as a way of going for refuge to the Buddha, his teachings, and the spiritual community, the Sangha that uphold his teachings. So as you recite the mantra, you can visualize the Shakyamuni Buddha in the space in front of you. There's one essence or one entity with one's own spiritual teachers of this life and all the other Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. And then from his holy body, white light rays radiate out, purifying oneself and all sentient beings, and then golden light rays radiate out, blessing oneself and all sentient beings to develop every form of well-being and happiness of the full enlightenment. Maha so Maha so Maha so and then visualize Shakyamuni Buddha becomes very small, like the size of the tip of your thumb, the first joint of your thumb, the first section of your thumb, I guess, above the joint, and then comes to the crown it comes to the space above the crown of your head, and with great affection abides there to bless you and guide you as you engage in this session. And the same for every other sentient being. Mm, okay. So we want to, in this session, we want to finish equanimity and do some meditation on equanimity, and then go over um, the first of 2 methods for generating bodhicitta, the method of the sevenfold cause and effect method of generating bodhicitta. So remember, with regard to bodhicitta, the 2 methods for generating it are the sevenfold cause and effect method and the method of equalizing and exchanging self and others. Um, so we'll go over this session, the sevenfold cause and effect method, and then the next session we'll go over the method of the second one, equalizing and exchanging self and others. But before we do that, in this session, we'll review a little bit what we've already gone over, and then um, speak a little bit more about equanimity and do a meditation on equanimity, and then yeah, the sevenfold cause and effect method. So yeah, so in this module on how to generate bodhicitta with 6 sessions, the first session, this is the third session, right? So the first session was on what is bodhicitta, definition mainly. Um, so remember, bodhicitta is it's a mental consciousness, right? It's not a sense consciousness. It's a main mind as opposed to a mental factor, meaning it merely observes its object without performing any specific function in regard to the object. And so what's the object bodhicitta observes is full enlightenment, right? So it observes full enlightenment, and not like the enlightenment of someone else, but one's own future full enlightenment. So each of us as a sentient being, we have a continuum of existence, from infinite. The beginning is there's no beginning, but there is a possible end of existence as a sentient being. Although ultimately, even when we become a Buddha, the Buddhas continue to exist infinitely in the future. So, in but as part of our continuum, because we have the potential to become enlightened, eventually that potential will meet the causes and conditions to become manifest state, right? So it means eventually we will become enlightened. Every sentient being will become enlightened. So when we generate bodhicitta, we observe the enlightenment that's part of our continuum in the future. So our own future enlightenment. That's mainly what we observe. And so that main mind observing our own future enlightenment is accompanied by the wish to achieve that, the aspiration to actualize that, to achieve that. Um, and so that's remember, enlightenment is the mind possessing two aspirations. One is the accompanying or the companion aspiration. So that's that one. The aspiration to achieve enlightenment goes together with this main mind observing our own future enlightenment. And then there's a causal aspiration as well, right? So there's a companion aspiration and a causal aspiration. So the causal aspiration is what? Great compassion, right? Great compassion, wishing to free all sentient beings from suffering. So, so that's where bodhicitta arises from. This, seeing the suffering of all sentient beings, taking, having a sense of personal responsibility, feeling I myself must, do something or do whatever I can um, to relieve sentient beings from suffering. And then when we check to see, well, what's the best thing I can possibly do, is to quickly become enlightened. Um, of course, there's many things in the shorter term to do, but in the long term one, that's the best. Um, right. So that's bodhicitta. Um, yeah, you can see the whole topic of bodhicitta, it brings together many, many, many things that we've already studied before. It's kind of like in 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 everything we've studied before in this course, it all relates somehow to generating bodhicitta. So it's not, every time I prepare for a session like this, I always feel like there's so much more to talk about than there's time to talk about in a session. But that's the fact of an introductory course like this, is that we just get a little taste, and then if we want to know more, we have to spend more time, go back over. Myself having, um, been introduced to the idea of bodhicitta more than 20 years ago. But it's still something I feel like, as my understanding of different aspects of Buddhist teachings grow, my idea and my sense of what bodhicitta is, it continues to grow and develop. So it's not a short-term thing. It's something, yeah, our own idea of our own sense of our own experience of it continues to grow and develop. Um, but really, bodhicitta, it's like everything you think about, like the four noble truths, the truth of suffering. It relates to bodhicitta because bodhicitta arises from compassion. So the deeper understanding of our own suffering is, the deeper our sense of empathy for others is, the greater our compassion is, the easier it is to generate bodhicitta. You think about the nature of the mind, in the first session. Well, the more we understand the nature of our own mind, how it's merely that which is clear and knowing, it's by nature free of obscurations. It's not in the nature of anger or attachment or jealousy or disturbance. Then the more it becomes clear how, yeah, it's possible to become enlightened for myself, for others. All sentient beings are fundamentally equal in having this kind of mental continuum, this pure, luminous nature of mind. We're all equal in that regard. So even just relation to equanimity, that comes in, and then the possibility of enlightenment. Then I don't know what else to recover. And refuge. Yeah, I mean to understand refuge, like the Buddha, the Buddha refuge. Well, where does the Buddha come from? The Buddha comes from bodhicitta. Where does bodhicitta comes from? So it comes from compassion. So to understand, I mean, the Buddha, we have to understand bodhicitta, and they relate to each other. And then um, impermanence and death. Yeah, when you think about, I mean, then you bring like bodhicitta into that meditation on impermanence and death, or precious human rebirth. I don't think that's a module in itself, but it relates. But you think about, okay, now I have this rebirth as a human being, where I have intelligence. Well, we have a kind of good balance of intelligence on the one hand, but also it's not like we're gods in a god realm. We're in a pure land, in a perfect kind of like a heaven where we have everything we could need and we don't have any problems, any suffering. In that situation, we wouldn't generate any kind of renunciation for samsara. It'd be totally pleasant. So why get out? But as a human being, we have a lot of suffering as well. But we're not totally overwhelmed by suffering like a being in the hell realms or the animal realms, where there's no capacity to think about or do anything about it because you're just completely um, swamped in suffering. So we have this balance of like suffering on the one hand, but quite a lot of ease on the other hand, and intelligence to be able to think about our whole situation and what's going on. So in this, this rebirth as a human being, or we've met the Buddha's teachings, but then we're going to die before long. At the most we live like 100 years, 120 years, um, and every day we're coming closer to death. So then when we bring bodhicitta in that, but it's possible, it's possible to become enlightened. It's possible to generate the aspiration to become enlightened. So then it makes, and that aspiration itself will lead to, the most positive, the most virtuous attitudes, most virtuous possible actions will help us easily overcome or reduce anger and attachment, um, and will lead us from life to life towards, this ultimate, highest, most positive goal of enlightenment, of full enlightenment. So then it makes, this life seem all the more precious. The fact that we have the opportunity to generate and meditate on bodhicitta, but that this opportunity won't last long. So when you put those two together, because of death, death will come, and then who knows what will happen in the process of death? Who knows where it will take rebirth? So then it makes, death seem even more like something we have to prepare for in a way, something we need to like recognize is going to happen and make the most of the days and months and years that we have before that happens. Um, and then think about all of samsara. Yeah. Anyway, you see how it relates. If I spend all the time relating, talking about, if I spend too much time talking about how bodhicitta relates to all the other topics in the Lamrim, it'll take up the whole session. But in short, no, use your own during the week. When you spend some time meditating on bodhicitta, do that also. Think about all the other topics that we've studied in the Discovering Buddhism course and how they relate to bodhicitta. And you'll see that it's like you really get the sense like all of the topics in the Buddha's teachings are really like the mesh in a woven mat, like in a straw mat or in a basket. How all the different fibers they meet, at some point, and they support one another. And it's only in dependence on one another that they actually have profound meaning. Um, the meaning becomes much, much more rich when you relate all the different topics to the others without taking each one in individual like isolation. So when we in an introduction course like this, we usually present them somewhat in isolation from each other because we need to get an idea about each topic. What is the main ideas, main understanding that we need to develop, and the main way of meditating on that topic. But then as you get more comfortable, as you learn about all the different topics, then it's very becomes much more effective for the mind, much more rich in terms of our understanding, and much more powerful in our way of thinking about like who we are as a person and what we want to do with our life. To think about all those different topics and the way they relate to each other. So having said that, let's look at our with equanimity. I'll share my screen now. And okay. So is it it's on slide in your view now? Should be now. No, it is. Like the pink is filling the whole screen. Okay, good. I want a whole screen filled with pink for equanimity. Um, okay, so well, actually, because I'll go back. Why did I choose pink for this? You might ask. Because well, this photograph came up in my I don't know Microsoft PowerPoint. But I thought that different photographs came up that I just divided among the different topics. But I thought this is a kind of a nice one for equanimity because it has all these little, I don't know what you call those things. They're little arms sticking out from that or appendages of this one kind of sea organism. So I thought that they're kind of analogous to sentient beings now. But then they're all connected, at the root. They all grow out of this one thing. So I like that. All sentient beings are different. They're independent, but they all are connected, not that they grow from one thing, but that they have equal, similar natures and potential, similar potential. So, and the photo's pink, right? So then I choose pink for the background. That's the predominant color. Okay, so um, so there are many different reasonings to use to meditate on equanimity. But some of the main ones are here. I sort of made four. So these two we went over last week. So we'll just go over all four or five again, and then spend some time reflecting on each in turn for a bit. So, so when we start though, the method, right, for generating equanimity is like when we meditate on the four immeasurables, we visualize ourselves surrounded by all sentient beings in these three groups, right? The three groups meaning not that inherently sentient beings are included in those groups, but that's how we tend to relate to different people, right? So some people we tend to like and consider them as dear. So we visualize, begin with our mother and father. So we visualize them, on our left, our mother of this life to our immediate left, and then all our female friends and family behind us to our left and behind us. And then on our right, our father of this life, and then all our male friends and family to our right and behind us. I mean, but it doesn't have to be your mother and father to your right and left. If you have, I don't, um, the idea is that the person to your immediate right and left, the people who have been you most close and most supportive to you, on the both a woman or a female, and then a male figure. So if that's someone other than your biological mother and father or whatever your whoever raised you, that's fine. You just choose whoever person. Anyway, so the friends and family, the people who are we tend to consider as supportive for us. We visualize to our left and right and behind us. And then people we're most prone to become irritated and angry with. We um, visualize them in front of us, facing towards us. And then all the other sentient beings we visualize in human form, seated all around us. But then when we do the meditation and equanimity, it's good because it's good to take one person from each group who especially when we're starting to meditate on equanimity, take one friend, one antagonist, and one neutral person, and visualize them in front of us. And then we start meditating with regard always to the easiest and work to the hardest, right? So it's easiest to generate sort of equanimity, a mind of concern and caring about a person that's unaffected by attachment and aversion. So it's easiest to do that with regard to a neutral person. So we start with a neutral person. And then the next easiest is someone we like, but our affection for them is colored with attachment, right? Colored with this selfish expectation that we're going to get some enjoyment and happiness from them. We put this kind of burden of expectation that they're going to please us on them. So we want to reduce that without reducing this fundamental caring about and wishing for their well-being. Without, so we want to, with regard to the friends and family, we want to reduce attachment, but not reduce love, right? So we want to try to separate those out. Um, and then have an equal sense of love for the friend or family member as we do for the stranger. Try to balance those. And then third, we go on. So we start with the neutral person, then we go to the friend, and then finally we work with the person we have aversion for, right? The enemy or the antagonist, the person we tend to dislike. We try to reduce our dislike for them and increase our sense of concern and caring about them, and try to generate an equal sense of love and compassion, wishing for their happiness, wishing for them to be free from suffering for that person. One big reasoning with regard to the enemy is because if they didn't have suffering, then they wouldn't harm us at all. If they had happiness, then of course we would easily relate to them and feel a closeness with them. Um, yeah. But here when we meditate on equanimity, it's good to visualize all sentient beings around, as we usually do, but visualize one representative from each group directly in front of us. Okay, so then we use these different reasonings to meditate on equanimity. First, reflect how all sentient beings are the same in desiring happiness and free from suffering. I mean, that's really the main one, right? And that one, yeah, you can think about in a million different ways. But yeah, reflect like in relation to their how they're all the same and being uh, yeah, having the same the nature of mind, as I was talking about, have the same potential for enlightenment, but just having this fundamental desire, this intuitive, innate wish to be free from suffering and wish to have happiness. And then on top of that, but the potential that they have the potential to be free from suffering. They have the potential to have perfect happiness up to full enlightenment. And then in addition to that, that they have the right to those. They're entitled to be free from suffering and have happiness. So we're all the same in that way. But we should think about it in a way that makes us feel like other sentient beings are just the same as me. I'm just the same as others. There's no difference between us. Um, and then that bringing a sense of closeness. So then and it should affect not just, it shouldn't be just a dry, sorry, intellectual exercise that we do on our cushion, but it should affect how we see others when we go out. When we get off our cushion, we go to, go to the store, we drive on the road, when we go to our place of work, when we go to, a public event, like a game or a theater or something. It should affect how we see other sentient beings. So, I mean, what's really helpful, I think I mentioned before, is to bring the ideas that we meditate on into, our awareness when we're around others. Think how these other sentient beings, they also, just like me, they want happiness. They want to be free from suffering. And when we read about others in the news, think, well, basically, they want to be happy. They want to be free from suffering. That's what's motivating them to do these different things. But unfortunately, so often people have, deluded ideas about what's going to bring them happiness, what's going to free them from suffering. Right. Okay. So then, um, another reasoning to use is to reflect how, from the perspective of oneself, all sentient beings have equally been friends, enemies, and strangers to us through countless lifetimes, right? So here it's like oh, yeah, and then even in this lifetime, identifications can quickly change. So it's like we zoom out, instead of saying, our ordinary view is like up close and, like, I don't know, looking at what up close. Um, Well, maybe like a map, It's like looking at your neighborhood up close, like only seeing our neighborhood, thinking of our neighborhood in the way that we only see, as we walk around it, we only see a certain amount of trees and buildings and bushes and houses and stuff. But it's very different if we look on Google Maps or something and we kind of zoom out and we see this whole, look at a map of our neighborhood. It's like we zoom out and get this whole different perspective, right? So like that, instead of just seeing other sentient beings in terms of the way we relate to them in this life, um, zoom out and think of our many lives, how we've existed over many lives with these sentient beings. So we kind of imagine zooming out and then looking at our many lives and many different relationships with sentient beings before us. So the people who've been, are our mother and father or very dear to us in this life, and other lives they've been completely something completely different. And the people whom we might be most averse to in this life, in other lives they've been dear friends to us. The people who now appear as strangers in other lives, we've been very close to them. Either having great affection or great aversion, either way or both. So in a way, like I mentioned last time, it's really helpful to think about that as just like the people whom we're very close to in this life, think, where will we be 200 years from now? We'll all have died. We'll all have taken rebirth. We'll all be in different forms. Even if we all, meet or we come across them again and again, we won't recognize them. They won't recognize us. But yet we were still in these intimate relationships or that we're in now. That doesn't change at all. So if we could remember all of our past lives, then we would see, how we've been, in different relationships with different sentient beings. Also, that's what we do in this second kind of reasoning with equanimity. So kind of zoom out, think of our whole perspective of many lives, and realize, yeah, how we've been. It's not that the people who are friends now are inherently friends, have been enemies in the past, and so forth. So we've been in all different relationships as friends, enemies, and strangers equally with all sentient beings. And another one that, I mean, um, and then, well, yeah, of course, even in this life, those roles can dramatically change. So think of some examples from your life for that. But then another thing that's related here is like, and all sentient beings, we're stuck with them, you know. Whereas the people we dislike, it's not like they're gonna go away anywhere next life, Sometimes we have the idea like, oh, you know, if they would just die, then I'd never have to meet them again or something. Um, but but actually that's not the case. We'll meet, everybody, every sentient being. We're going to meet them again and again in the future. So the only way, kind of, to really get out of very unpleasant relationships is to subdue our own mind, to get rid of anger in our own mind, to get rid of aversion in our own mind, and also to help the other people who might harm us or disturb us. Um, and harm others, to help them get rid of afflictive emotions, right? The only reason they harm is because their minds are distorted, are tormented by afflictive emotions, right? So to help them get over their afflictive emotions. But it's like we're all together with all sentient beings for infinite future time. So there's no way just to like get out of that room with the people you don't like and go somewhere else, because we're all in the same room together like forever. Um, yeah. And then there's this quotation I think I read over last time, so maybe I'll just read it again. Within a short space of time, even an enemy can become a friend can become an enemy. Likewise, either one may become indifferent, may become a stranger, while those who were indifferent may become enemies or intimate friends. Knowing this, the wise never form attachments. So remember, attachment meaning this kind of exaggerated expectation that others will please us. They give up the thought of delighting in friends. So yeah, that line especially, it doesn't mean like, I mean, you can see like the Dalai Lama says, has friends all over the world. It's not like we give up um, having friends. It's that we give up. I think delighting is probably a bit of a um, misleading translation here. It's more like the we give up the thought of expecting others to give us happiness, right? But we do hold others dear, and in that way, we have the thought of friends. So they give up the thought of delighting in friends and are content to focus on virtue. Yeah. Okay, then some other reasonings, two more. From the perspective of others, right? So from our perspective, other sentient beings have been, in different lives, have been um, equally kind, equally cruel to us. So we shouldn't hold them differently. From the perspective of others, other sentient beings are equally friends, enemies, and strangers, right? So there's nothing so sacrosanct about our perspective on what others are, right? So here we zoom out and look at other sentient beings, but in a slightly different way. We try to think of them from the perspective of others, right? So the person that to generate a more equal attitude. So the people that we hold dear, other people might really dislike and find completely like ridiculous and appalling. Um, does that mean we should have the same attitude of them? Of course not. No, but it just means our kind of what do you say? Our positive attitude of other people is not inherent, um, inherently there. And likewise, maybe more importantly, our negative other people whom we find unpleasant, other people find very dear and pleasant. The people whom we feel very distant from and want to kind of shun, keep away. Other people find them, are very are they're very dear to other people. Everyone has a mother, a father, or someone that cares about them deeply, a partner. So in that way, and the people whom are strangers to us are, again, they're very dear to some, others are averse to them. So in that way, they're also equal. And then meditate on the antidotes to anger and attachment. So whatever antidotes to anger, antidotes to attachment you'll learn, because you can apply here, right? And there's so many. So because here the real problem, what we're trying to get rid of is holding some dear with attachment, um, and holding others is shunning others, having aversion to others to the force of irritation and anger. So we want to reduce anger, reduce attachment, and have an equal sense and generate an equal sense of concern for others. So any antidotes to anger or attachment we can apply. Um, and then just two more points, and then we'll meditate. So another contemplation that's really helpful here is just that, all suffering and harm comes from our afflictive emotions, or comes from afflictive emotions of ours and other beings. It doesn't come from the sentient beings. So especially with regard to those whom we tend to dislike and enemies, think, if they didn't, why do they do things that we find disturbing, that we dislike, that makes us not trust them, um, that makes us, that we've been hurt by them? Primarily because, why do we do things that other people dislike, that when we harm others, why do we do that? It's not because we want to just hurt other people. And very few people must maybe have that kind of motivation. It's because our minds are distorted by afflictive emotions, by selfishness, lack of concern for others, by ignorance, um, by, jealousy, arrogant pride, um, by, distrust. So our minds are, yeah, and greed, attachment, um, desire, um, miserliness. So because our own minds are by afflicted by disturbing emotions, that's why we do things that harm others, and the same for other people. So if other sentient beings were free from afflictive emotions, they wouldn't do things that harm us. So thinking that in relation, especially to the people we dislike, helps reduce anger. Um, and then, another way to think is that, yeah, all happiness comes from virtuous minds, and others can neither give those to us or take them away. So especially with regard to attachment towards friends and family, this can be helpful to think how all of our own happiness, our good fortune, our experience of pleasure, ultimately comes from our karma, virtuous karma that we ourselves have created. So to have this expectation that, by being with other people, being with good people I like, then that itself will give me happiness, is a false expectation. Other friends can be supportive to us. Other people definitely can be inspiring, you know, have a beneficial effect, be a good influence on us, help us in many ways. And I mean, all of our happiness comes about independence upon other sentient beings, right? But that doesn't mean, but here we're thinking about attachment, because we need to reduce attachment for friends and family. And what that means is reducing this unrealistic expectation that from their side, they can give us pleasure, give us happiness. That's a totally unrealistic expectation. Our own happiness it's in our own mind. Right? It's something that arises in our own mind. We have to take our own responsibility for creating our own happiness. Remember, this is one of the most difficult lessons I kind of had to learn here at the monastery when I was a new monk. Um, and sometimes I was really, some days I was really, really miserable, struggling with learning Tibetan, struggling with learning debate, struggling to understand teachers in class, struggling to learn how to write Tibetan grammar. And then, the food, and then being in India, and it's just like so many things difficult. But the monks, I was living with the Kopan monks at a Kopan house. Some of the monks would tell me, but why don't you just be happy? And then that'd make me more irritated. I want to yell at them like, what are you talking about? I'm miserable. What are you telling me? Just be happy. Like, I'm not it's just an idiot. You want me to just go out and sing a song and like be happy? But um but but then I mean, you think about it, it's true. I mean, we sometimes we make ourselves miserable by the way we think about things. You know, if we just look at all the things that we can't do, that are not going well, on any day, of course, that we don't like, all the things we don't like about someone else, all the things we don't like about ourselves, all the little things that annoy us. We can always find things that we don't like and annoy us. But if we just focus exclusively on those, of course, we're going to become miserable. But in any situation, there's always silver lining to the cloud. If we focus on things that are, we are our good fortune, we do have are going well, that the positive qualities we see in ourselves, the positive qualities we see in others, then we can make our minds happy. So it really is up to us to make our minds happy, to generate well-being and happiness in our minds. Um, and if we could do that, then nobody else could. If we, I mean, that's really like one of the main practices in Buddhism, is to become more skilled at understanding, our own minds, how they work, how we create suffering and unhappiness, misery for ourselves, and how we can also create happiness and well-being, not only life to life, like in terms of karma, but in each moment, right? In this moment, where are we directing our attention? Where are we putting our energy? Where are we investing ourselves in? In things that we see we don't like and we can criticize and just make us miserable, or things that we see are like good and going well and bring us a sense of joy, right? So yeah, so we really do have to. I think. I mean, I don't know. I know I had, as an American, as a Westerner coming to this kind of Asian Buddhist tradition, I see. I mean, when I hear my friends from Nepali or Tibetan friends, the way they talk about, you have to just make your mind happy. I realized, I guess, gradually that, yeah, I kind of had this expectation that I don't have control over, that happiness is just something, it either happens. If it happens, if it's real happiness, it just has to happen naturally. Like, it has to just happen. It has to be something. It's not something that you create. If it's something you put effort into creating, it's kind of fake and not real in a way. And sometimes, unhappiness just happens and we don't really have any control. We just kind of have to bear it. So definitely the Buddhist perspective on that is very different. It's more like, no, no, we have to generate this kind of wisdom. We have to generate, yeah, gain this sort of wisdom of understanding of what, how our mind works, how it becomes unhappy and why in some circumstances, and how it can become very happy and joyous in other circumstances. And then we have to intentionally, you know, continually kind of create circumstances in our own way of thinking about things and looking at things and doing things that bring about joy and satisfaction, and avoid thinking about things in a way that makes ourselves miserable and unhappy. Um, but I think maybe I have to add a caveat there, but not in a way that denies reality, right? Because there is a kind of, I don't know, maybe a kind of new agey way of thinking about things that you feel happy, but it's not really realistic. No. So there's a caveat that we don't want to try to just escape reality and live in this kind of, I don't know, um, uh, dream bubble, right? We want to look at reality as it is, but see all the positive things there are about it, and focus our attention on those. I'll come back to that point in just a minute, but I think that's enough said now. Um, yeah, to meditate on equanimity, right? So, are there any questions? Um, about any of those things? Yeah. There's so many different reasonings related to equanimity. I tried to just narrow it down to some of the main ones here, but from just what I'm saying, I'm sure you can see there's many, many different ways to think about. But the main thing is just to remember that, what are we trying to do? Generate an equal sense of concern for all sentient beings. I mean, one other reasoning I was thinking about in preparing for this session was just how, because when we generate a attitude of equanimity towards others, it also means like we're trying to, well, again, clarify for ourselves that the way we relate to others is not dependent on how they treat me, right? But rather, rather that the way we relate to others, we want to make it more dependent on just how I want to be, right? How I want to treat others, how I want to think about others. Oops, someone's calling me. I didn't silence my phone. So the way we relate to others, the way we think about others, the way we engage with others, we want to keep it more like, yeah, the kind of person I want to be and how I want to relate, how I want to treat others, rather than being reactive. That I'm going to treat others, independence upon how they treat me. They treat me nice, I'll be nice to them. If they're mean to me, then I'm going to be mean to them, right? We don't want to be like that, right? So that's another part of equanimity, is kind of taking it into our own hands, how we want to relate to others. Okay, any questions though? Stop talking for a bit and give you space. Um, okay. Well, we're going to meditate for 10 minutes or so on equanimity. So if you need a sip of water or wiggle around in your chair or something, then do that. Mm, mm, mm. Okay. So let's get comfortable in our meditation posture. And then gradually let your mind settle down and bring your attention within. And then visualize yourself surrounded by all sentient beings in the way we've done before, with your father of this life at your immediate right, and all your male friends and family, those you tend to hold dear to your right and behind you. Then on your left, your mother of this life, all the female friends and family you hold dear to your left and behind you. And then antagonists seated in front directly facing towards you. And then all the other sentient beings in human form all around. And then visualize a representative of each group, um, friend, antagonist, and stranger, directly in front of you in space. So remember our objective to generate an equal sense of concern for all sentient beings, unaffected by attachment to some, holding them close, holding them dear, and unaffected by aversion to others, holding them distant. So just remember your objective first. And then begin with the first reasoning that all sentient beings are the same and wishing to be free from suffering and wishing to have happiness. So one way to approach that is to ask the question, is that the case? And then analyze to see, whether it is true that every sentient being. But stick with, instead of looking at all sentient beings, look at these three you're visualizing in front. Start with the person you're neutral. You have a neutral attitude towards a stranger, and reflect, about, is it true that they wish to be free from suffering and have happiness? And if so, then what is that? Try to deepen your sense of what that is for them, how that motivation or how that desire motivates them, and how it works in their mind, how it's a force kind of in their life, and then try to generate some sense of how it's the same for oneself, one similarity in that way, how both self and this other person were the same in wishing to be free from suffering, wishing to have happiness. So spend a couple minutes just with this reasoning, thinking first about the neutral person, then or the stranger, then the friend, and then the enemy. And then let's move on to the second reasoning that in the perspective or the view of countless past lives, we've been in all these different relationships as friend, enemy, and stranger with all sentient beings equally. So then again, specifically related to these three in front of you. So first observe the person you have a neutral attitude towards. Think how they've been friends, enemies in past lives, and even in this life, they could become a dear friend or detested kind of antagonist. And then move on to the friend, and then the enemy. Think about how they're equal in this way, in terms of past lives and the possibility to change kinds of relationship in this life. The next reasoning. From the perspective of others, they're equally friends, strangers, and enemies. So putting our own perspective of others, you know, aside, just thinking about others from their side, or the other way other people relate to the ones whom we consider dear friends or detested antagonists, enemies, or strangers. So it's kind of related to emptiness, actually, how there's no one is inherently a friend or inherently an enemy, inherently a stranger. It's just a relative, temp, advantageous to temporary way that, of relating, and how there's nothing sacrosanct about our perspective. So think about the perspective of others. on the ones that we consider close or distant or neutral. So again, about, I don't know, just a minute or two thinking about that, trying to generate a sense of equanimity towards others. And finally, the last um, point is, yeah, basically antidotes to anger and attachment. So thinking, especially with, so first, uh, yeah, so this more relates to not so much the strangers, but to the um, friends and enemies. So first relate with regard, the three people visualized in front with regard to the friend, the one who's dear to you. Then try to recognize how we hold them close because of attachment. But actually, our own, because we want happiness, we feel like we get happiness from them, but it can help. So in this case, to reduce attachment, to realize how actually our own well-being and happiness and enjoyment primarily comes from our own virtuous minds and virtuous actions. Yes, independence upon other sentient beings, but we have to generate the causes of happiness within our own minds, both in the moment and also over the long term in terms of karma. And then with regard to the enemy, the person we tend to dislike, to think about how, that whatever they're doing that annoys us, irritates us, um, or harms us, is because of both the afflictive emotions in their mind and also because of our own karma, the meeting of these two in an unfortunate kind of way. But that primarily, they're also suffering because they have afflictive emotions in their mind, and that's what causes, them to act in ways that are irritating, disturbing to us. So try just for a minute each to reduce attachment to friends and reduce aversion towards enemies. So finally, end with just trying to see if now, compared to at the beginning of the session, you feel like you can generate a more equal sense of concern or affection or sense of regard or connection with all other sentient beings. Okay, so let's pause there. So yeah, you can see there's, I mean, there's also, I was thinking, impermanence and death very much relates. If you think about how all sentient beings are equally in having been born, having experienced birth, having, old age, sickness, and then death, the fact that it's a great equalizer as well. So there's so many things to think about. So this is just a brief taste, but I suggest like in your own time, you can take the outlines that I've sent out or that are also you find in the readings. These outlines are mostly based on liberation on the palm of your hand, but also in the readings. And then meditate, take more time to meditate on each point. And I mean, this is a really helpful meditation to do, like I said, when you're doing other things, especially when you're around other people in public places. Anyway, now let's take a 5 minute break and then we'll go on to the next thing. Okay? So a 5 minute break. Let's see. Okay. Welcome back from your break. Um, yeah, any questions or comments about the equanimity? Otherwise, we'll move on to the sevenfold cause and effect method. Uh, Okay, then I'll assume you all have that pretty clear. Um, yeah. Okay, so the next, the sevenfold cause and effect method. I'll go ahead and share my screen. Move to a different color, green. Um, yeah, this is another picture that just came up in this PowerPoint. But it's nice because look, it has 7 drops on the leaf. Huh. So it worked out very well. We can consider this one in the middle, Bodhichitta, and then the 6 around all the causes contributing to Bodhichitta. So yeah, the sevenfold cause and effect method is like that. There's 7 branches or parts. Um, there's 2 different ways to look at it, but maybe we'll just stick with the first for now, which is that bodhicitta, the mind of bodhicitta is an effect. So we go through a gradual process of meditating on 6 different topics, which are all causes, contributing to gradually generating the mind of bodhicitta. Um, so here are the 7 together. Um, yeah. So first, understanding all. So the labels for each are from Liberation of the Palm of Your Hand. You'll find slightly different translations in different places. But understanding all sentient beings to be your mother, then remembering their kindness, then repaying their kindness means generating a wish to repay their kindness. So those 3 kind of go together. Those 3 then are cause for love and compassion, which is a cause for altruism, cause and results. They all result in bodhicitta. So, okay. So then, understanding all sentient beings to be your mother, remembering how they've been kind to oneself, then repaying their kindness. or generating a wish to repay their kindness. And then love through the force of attraction. So it means generating a sort of affection, a loving affection for sentient beings, um, which is kind of a, yeah, a wishing that that they be free from, I mean, that they have happiness. So we've talked about love before, wishing that all sentient beings have happiness. But with a special sense of affection, like a mother would have for a child. Then compassion, wishing sentient beings to be free from suffering. And here we want great compassion, as we spoke about it before, wishing for all sentient beings to be free from every form of compassion, especially from the three types of suffering. Sorry, wishing for all sentient beings to be free from every form of suffering, especially from the three types of suffering: the suffering of change, the third, the pervasive compounding suffering, or the suffering of being under the control of karma and afflictive emotions. Yeah, so great compassion, and then that gives rise to in yeah in the Michael Richards translation, he translates it as altruism, but it's not a very good translation of the Tibetan term as laksam. Um, um, in the what is it? There's a different in the great treatise on the stages of the path. They translate that term as the wholehearted resolve, which is closer. Um, but a more literal translation is just an exceptional intention. Um, but what this means is so uh, taking a sense of personal responsibility, basically thinking not only do I want all sentient beings to have happiness, not only do I desire for all sentient beings to have be free from suffering and have compassion, but I myself must do that. I must commit myself to accomplishing that. So you generate that kind of resolve, or that kind of intention that I myself will do whatever I can to um, free all sentient beings from suffering and establish them in perfect well-being and happiness. Right. So then that mind then gives rise to bodhicitta. So yeah, the usual way to meditate on these is by thinking about the first six as causes and the seventh as an effect. But another way to think about them in the way that Tsongkhapa actually presents in his Lamrim outlines are as all of these as causes and effects of compassion. So thinking about the first four as causes for generating compassion, and then six and seven as results of compassion. So he puts compassion as central. Uh, but let's just I'll explain them each or talk about each of them a little bit one by one, and then we'll again spend some time meditating on them together. And we won't have a session next week because next week I'll be traveling on this day, Wednesday morning. So I won't be able to, yeah, host a session. But I think it's good since it's six sessions in one module. It's good we take a break in the middle because we'll, by the end of this session, we'll have covered a lot of material. So there's no shortage of, things to reflect and meditate on. Um, yeah, and then we want to be fresh for the next topic of exchanging self and others. Okay, so we'll go through these one by one. Mm. So first, understanding all sentient beings um, to be your mother. This is one of the most difficult topics in the Lamrim uh, to realize, to generate. First of all, well, let's read this. That's why I put this quote here. I think it helps a lot with it. It says this is by Arya Asanga from his Levels of Yogic Deeds, which is like different trainings for bodhisattvas. And he quotes a sutra in there. So I don't know which sutra it's from, but it's supposed to be the word of the Buddha. It says, I have difficulty. So imagine the Buddha is I here, right? The Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha is saying, I have difficulty seeing a place wherein you have not been born, or gone to, or died in the distant past. I have difficulty seeing any person in the distant past who has not been your father, mother, uncle, aunt, sister, master, abbot, guru, or someone like a guru. So in short, the Buddha's just looking at. I think this is spoken to a nun, actually, but anyway, he's looking, one of his students saying, basically, like you have infinite past lives, right? It's difficult. So the Buddha is omniscient, right? So he sees everything. Of course, what exactly that means is a little bit debatable, um, but the Buddha's mind can see, infinite past lives of any individual. As the mind, is power of knowing is unimpeded in any way. So, so he's saying, think about, for oneself, where did, where did this life I have, where did it arise from? Of course, ordinarily we think about, from the conception, from the sperm and egg of our parents, from the time of conception. But remember, there's consciousness there as well. So where did we have the stream of consciousness we experience now. Where did that come from? The one in the present moment is produced by the previous moment of consciousness. So in Pabonka Rinpoche's Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand, in regard to this topic, he gives a quotation by Dharmakirti, where Dharmakirti is basically giving the main reasoning, establishing the existence of past and future lives, which is that when you look at what we exist as now, basically we have a body, all this physical stuff that's part of our person, our hair and teeth and nails and skin and bones and blood and even our speech, all of our physical actions. So we have all this physical stuff that makes us up, but then we also have a mind. We have consciousness, which is something fundamentally not physical. Um, so that consciousness, this moment of a consciousness that we have now, where did that arise from? What is its cause? Did it arise from our body in the previous moment? Or did it arise from something similarly non-physical or a previous moment of consciousness? So the fundamental Buddhist assertion, right, is that consciousness is something, it's a fundamentally different kind of thing from matter or any form of matter, right? And so consciousness has to have arisen from something similar to itself, right? You can't take, like a bunch of brain cells and then, let's say from a corpse, like take a brain out of a corpse and then magically do something to it and make it produce consciousness, right? That consciousness is something, it has to arise from a similar kind of substance. Just like you can't take, a bunch of soil and do something to it and make it become gold, right? Gold is something fundamentally different substance from just like soil, right? So similar to that, or take like a lump of iron and expect somehow to squeeze like oil. Well, maybe oil, maybe water out of it. Anyway, so different things have different kind of substances and um, different kinds of substantial causes, they're called. So consciousness, any moment of consciousness only arises from a previous moment of consciousness. So when we go back then in our stream of consciousness awareness to the time of conception, there has to be, yes, as a human being, we have to be born from a sperm and egg of our parents, but that the awareness, um, at or soon after the time of conception, the consciousness of that being, where does it come from? So Buddhists say it comes from a previous moment of consciousness before it can join with the sperm and egg at the time of conception. So thereby there has to be have to be a previous stream of awareness before conception, which is a past life. Actually, it's the Bardo being, and then before that, their past life, before they died from a previous life and entered the Bardo. So the Buddha's looking at that and saying, well, and then how can that begin? If one moment of consciousness arises from a previous moment, that arises from a previous moment, is there an infinite regress? Yes. So that's the only logical conclusion. Because how could there be a first moment of consciousness? Like you try to imagine that, how, you know, how could that, how could I mean, in general, how can anything arise from nothing, right? Um, So there can't be just nothing and then something arises from it. That just it doesn't make sense. How can that possibly be possible? So also in terms of specific kinds of things, so in terms of consciousness, how could a first moment of awareness of consciousness arise from nothing? Impossible. So the logical is, it almost is, it's very difficult to fathom and to imagine is true in a way because it's so, eh, is so kind of beyond what we ordinarily think about. But if you follow the logic, that's the only logical conclusion, that the past continuum of consciousness has to be infinite. What's the other option? No. Um, so that's why in Buddhism we assert infinite past lives. And this is not a unique Mahayana thing. This is also in the Pali Canon. Pali Canon, Sanskrit Canon, same, because it's just the only logical conclusion, and also because in the Pali Canon they tend to more follow the reason, not it's a logical conclusion, but because the Buddha said so, and here the Buddha says so, right? Um, but yeah, so that's what the Buddha taught. I have difficulty seeing a place. So therefore, okay, so this is where it follows on. So because if we have infinite past lives, then there's all kinds of things that follow from that, right? If we've had infinite past lives and all those lives we've taken rebirth in samsara, then it means there's no place in samsara we haven't taken rebirth in. So, and there's no place we haven't been. There's no kind of being we haven't been. We sometimes take rebirth as an animal, sometimes as a hell being, sometimes as a hungry ghost, even as a human. Sometimes on Africa, sometimes Asia, sometimes Europe, sometimes South America, sometimes North America, sometimes other planets and other world systems. Sometimes male, sometimes female, sometimes short, sometimes tall. Every possibility, and there's no place we haven't been, no kind of being we haven't been, no kind of interaction we haven't had with anyone, with some caveat again, right? Nothing's ever completely easy. Um, but that's what the Buddha's getting at here. I have difficulty seeing a place wherein you have not been born or gone to or died in the past, right? Because you've had infinite past lives. And so in past lives, you've been all these different places. And therefore, and then also with regard to others, I have difficulty seeing any person in the distant past who has not been your father. So it's interesting, this quote, he doesn't start with mother, he starts with the father. The father, but I mean, it's not significant. The father, mother, uncle, aunt, sister, master, abbot, guru, and like. So back to okay, where am I? Oh yeah, understanding all sentient beings to have been your mother. Mother is just why do they use mother instead of having been your father or have been your brother or sister? Because for it's like archetypal mother, or kind of our typical ideal of an ideal mother is the one that, well, that we naturally feel closest to generally, or most easily have a sense of her affection for us, caring about us, kindness to us. Because what we're trying to meditate here is on the kindness of all sentient beings, how other sentient beings have been kind to us. So for a typical person, in their life, um, with a typical kind of very good mother, then yeah, the one that we can most easily identify how they've been kind to us is our mother, because she, carried us in her womb, nursed us, and when we're a child, look after us, make sure we're safe, make us food. I mean, think about, maybe not think about in the modern nuclear family where both parents are working. Think about, this is 2,500 years ago, India. No, the father goes out, he's out all day plowing the fields. He's come back, he's sweaty and tired and doesn't want to deal with like a lot of screaming kids. But mother is home all day, cleaning the house, cooking, feeding the kids, right? Not that, so, but, um, and that's the one that children naturally feel like close to. So, but the important thing here is the sense of kindness. So it doesn't have to be just the idea is to think about who are the people who've been most kind to you in your life, right? Because that's the very next thing the outline is reflecting on their kindness. So mother is just one suggestion, right? But it can also be your father, your aunt, your uncles, your grandmother, grandfather, sibling, your partner, teacher, a neighbor, friend, anyone. The idea is just think about who are the people who've been most supportive, most caring about me, most yeah, selflessly caring for me, kind to me, and think about those people one by one. Whether you start with your mother or not, it's not significant, not important. So understood, but and then so here to understand that, okay, in this life, so we start with the ones in this life, my mother of this life or my father of this life, or the people who've been kind to me in this life. But then think about how in the past life, in my immediate previous life, there are also people kind to me like that. Even as animals, if we're born as a dog or cat or, their mother are very kind to us, other kinds of animals. Um, and then in the life before that, and where are those people now? The ones who were kind to me in my past life, where are they now? They're still out there somewhere in different form. And then the life before that, and the life before that. So that when we think back then in terms of, gradually infinite lives, there's infinite sentient beings that have been, incredibly kind to us. And then where are they now? They're all these sentient beings that we see around us that we don't recognize as, anything particularly related to us. But there is a little difficulty with the reasoning, right? Does if we've had infinite past lives, um, and then so infinite people have been, kind to us, does that really mean every sentient being has been our mother, literally? No, that's not. You can't really prove that. The logic doesn't work. But what it does establish is that, which is very logically sound, is that there's no sentient being you can point to and say definitely they've never been very kind to me in a past life. We can't establish definitely because it's possible there is one sentient being who, in the infinite, even in infinite past lives, we've never been very close to. It's possible. But that would be like an outlier. But it's impossible to, look at any sentient being and say definitely they've never been, incredibly kind to me in a past life. That we definitely can't do. So, and most of them definitely have been uh, very kind to us in some past life. So that's one logical difficulty here to think about. Another is, well, okay, I've had infinite past lives. Just like in this life, many people are very kind to me. And so every sentient being has, probably every sentient being has been very kind to me in a past life. But in this life, there are also many people very mean to me. There are people who cheat me. There are people who mistreat me, people who harm me. There are terrible people in the world in this life. And in the past life, it was the same. And in the past life, before that, it was the same. Therefore, every sentient being has been very cruel to me and cheated me and very mean to me. Isn't that true? Doesn't the logic is the same? So, yeah, that's true. That's also, and we have to face that reality. I mean, that's also true. So then, don't we end up just neutral again? Okay, everyone's infinite. I've had infinite past lives. In all those lives, people were very kind. So yes, okay. But I've infinite past lives. In all those lives, people have been very cruel to me, tortured me, and killed me, and cheated me, and everything. So don't we end up just like back zero, basically? Positive one, negative one. They cancel each other out. Um, in terms of like just reality, yes, we do. But here we're not just looking at neutral reality. We're looking at mind training, a way to train our own mind, a way to generate, happiness for ourselves, happiness for others. So we want to focus on the positive. So it's back to what I was saying about creating happiness for oneself. We create, I mean, and then this relates back to emptiness. I mean, when I was talking about all the other Lamrim topics that Bodhicitta is related to, I didn't mention emptiness. But emptiness is the big underlier here for the whole thing, right? In terms of equanimity, also emptiness is extremely powerful. Think how no sentient being is inherently good or inherently bad, inherently dear or inherently distant from us. They're all empty of anything existing from their own side. So, but here, um, no, it's true that in infinite past lives, beings have, all sentient beings have also been our most, horrible kind of enemy or harm giver, person giving harm to us. But if we think about that, we can focus and we can focus on that. But what's going to be the effect of that? We'll be miserable. If we just spend, we can spend all day meditating on all the things people have done to hurt me and harm me in this life. And that it's not untrue. It's something that's true. But what's the effect on our mind? It makes us unhappy in the moment. It makes us resentful. And it can lead us, because of our own, selfishness and our ego, it can lead us into thinking we're justified in going out and taking revenge and harming others. And then on the basis of that, we create negative karma, and other people don't like us, other people are afraid of us. We end up in prison probably. And then in future lives, we experience suffering because of the negative karma. So we don't want that. What do we want? We want happiness now, happiness in the future, for ourselves, for others. So what's wise to do? Focus on how others are kind to us, are kind to us in this life, have been kind to us in past lives. All sentient beings have been kind to us. So we generate that view. That's not, um, I mean, if we're, we can be, aware that both of the case, all sentient beings have been cruel to me, all sentient beings have also been kind to me, and make a conscious choice to focus on the kind side, right? Because what will be the effect for us in this life? In the moment when we think how all sentient beings have been kind to us, we feel grateful toward them. We feel a sense of closeness. We feel a sense of gratitude, and we feel, yeah, happy in that moment. And also it means the way we treat others is good. We treat others in a way that's respectful, in a way that's gentle, in a way that we don't harm them, and we try to benefit them. What's the result for us? In that moment, we feel good about ourselves. Other people trust us. We have good friendships. Other people like to be around us. Things go well in life, and then we create virtuous karma. So in future lives, we also we experience, well-being, good fortune, and happiness. And that sounds kind of selfish, but we need all that in order to work more to benefit others. No, if we're always overwhelmed with misfortune and suffering and other people harming us, it's very difficult to do much to benefit others. So we need well-being, happiness, and good fortune. So we need to create positive karma, not in a selfish way, but in a way that recognizes that provides us the conditions to do more to benefit others. So yeah. So here, though, the meditation is just in this step, just recognizing how all sentient beings have been kind to us in the past, as have been, well, first of all, just been in these different relationships. Have been our mother, father, uncle, aunt, sister, dear friend, teacher, and so forth in the past. And then we remember their kindness, right? So then we think about all the ways. So we start with this life. Think about all the ways our mother, our grandmother, grandfather, others are kind to us. Just this life. That's probably the easiest part. You know, just think about all the different things, the selfless things they've done for us. Like I know I always think about one of my favorite aunts, my mother's elder sister. She's 20. Well, she's passed away now, but she was 20 years old, 20 years older than my mother. But my mom's from Iowa, so she's my mom's from a farm family. So her elder sister, she's kind of like a grandmother in a way because she's 20 years older than my mom. But she she really spent her life in her make as a homemaker, like raising kids, cooking, cleaning in the house, and taking care of her whole family. But she's such a warm, loving person. And every time we go visit, she's always make us pies. I mean, I love, like, she'd make us strawberry rhubarb pie or chocolate pie or any kind of pie we wanted. And was when we were kids, she'd always looking out and making sure we had a good time while we were there, asking, okay, what are you going to do today, and organizing us to be able to go ride four-wheelers or go ride in the tractor, or um, just really kind-hearted, loving person. So, but we all have different kinds of people like that in our lives. So here's the thing: is to meditate. And it's such a pleasant meditation. Think of all the people who have been, and the different ways they've been kind to you. One of the others, as I was preparing for the session, I was thinking how different people are kind to us in different ways. Like my father, I mean, one thing I most abhorred doing when I was a kid was, like, Saturday, Sunday chores, like especially washing the car. I had to wash our family cars, and inevitably, like after I do the first, I was kind of, I don't know, I didn't like doing it, so I tried to just do it quickly and get it done with, and maybe not. I wasn't so, I don't know, what do you say, particular about making sure I did a good job. Just kind of, okay, just do it and get it done. But inevitably, my father would come and inspect. After I'd have to come in and tell him, okay, I'm done washing the car, and then he'd come out and look over, like, every part of the hub, and every part of the door, and he'd find spots that I hadn't washed, that I hadn't gone over with the soapy, like, sponge, and then he'd tell me, okay, now do the whole thing again. Several times I did that. And I really didn't like it then. And with the lawn, mowing the lawn, it's the same. But now I really appreciate that, because when I, clean stuff, when I do different kind of work, I'm very, very meticulous about making sure it's done well, like looking for all the, you know, all the possible flaws and making sure it's done well. So I really appreciate that, you know, that. So that's a different kind of kindness, no? So here, anyway, in this step, we think about, um, yeah, remembering the kindness of others, and then wishing to repay their kindness. So here, it's wishing to repay the kindness, thinking, you know, yeah, all these others have been so kind to me. And here it kind of it kind of touches back to emptiness again, thinking about how, you know, well, remember, emptiness is best understood through dependent arising. And there's three kinds of dependent arising, right? Dependence upon causes and conditions, dependence upon parts, and dependence upon mental imputation. So here, maybe it's easy to think about dependence upon causes and conditions. So here we can think about how everything, you know, what are we as a person, and what are our experiences in life? In terms of causes and conditions, it's like everything that we are from our body, it all comes about in dependence upon others, right? Our body comes about in dependence upon, you know, our parents, the sperm and egg of our cells of our parents, and then all the food that we've eaten that becomes that part of our body. And then where does all the food come from? All the air, all the water, all comes from other sentient beings. And then our mind. Our mind, okay, the continuum of our consciousness maybe doesn't really directly come from another person, but all the contents of our mind, all the experiences that we have, especially when we look at all the thoughts that we have, the language, things we read, things we've come to know about, things that we think about, they all come about in dependence upon other sentient beings. I mean, language we learn from others, ideas, so many concepts we get from, you know, either school or books or, you know, music, movies, um, different media, from talking with other people, talking with our parents, talking with different family members, talking with friends, and all the companionship. You know, one of the things we enjoy most in life is companionship with others. That all comes about, and that's a kind of kindness that others show us. Even when others, you know, people we don't know, like, you know, provide the favorite food and that we buy at the store, like fruits or vegetables or cookies or whatever we like. You know, those people providing it, they don't do so in order to be kind to us. They do so just to make a living. But because they make it possible for us to buy and enjoy those things. So therefore they are kind to us. No? They enable us to enjoy so many things. So in that way, other sentient beings are also kind. And there's actually infinite ways other sentient beings are kind to us. Um, Maybe we'll talk about it more in relation to in the next session. But but here, when we meditate on, okay, thinking about others are kind and then repaying their kindness. So so just to that, why should we repay their kindness? Because everything that we are, everything that we have, all the possessions that we have, all come from other sentient beings. All the money we have comes about in the dependence upon others. So all the relationships we have with our, you know, parents, family, friends, all comes about in dependence upon them and dependence upon their parents and generations back and back and back. Um, and so it's like everything that we are comes about in dependence upon others. So of course we have obligation to use this person that we are to repay all of that kindness, to do, you know, contribute back, to give back to where every, you know, give back to the source of all of our well-being. Um, so yeah, so I mean, there's many different ways to think about it, but one is just to think about in relation to, I mean, your mother, your father, your grandparents, your siblings, how kind they've been to you, and to repay it out of a sense of gratitude. Maybe that word's not really mentioned here, but really it's like generating a sense of gratitude for the kindness of others. And then naturally, if we have gratitude for what others have given to us, we want to, you know, we naturally want to do something to give back. Um, so here, and then there's this nice quotation from Chandragoman, ancient Indian pandit. It says, when you see that your relatives, oh, uh, okay, so here brings in the aspect of suffering, seeing that they're, yeah, not only so, I guess, seeing that others have how much others have been kind to us, and then conjoin that with seeing how others, the people who've been so kind to us, are suffering, right? So bring those two together. So he says, when you see that your relatives are engulfed in the ocean of cyclic existence or samsara, and are as if fallen into a pit of fire. So imagine a person, fallen into a pit of fire. There is nothing more shameful than to work for your own liberation. So if you just to work for your own freedom from suffering alone, neglecting those whom you do not recognize due to the process of death and rebirth, right? So all these other sentient beings who have been infinitely kind to us in past lives, so I was saying how, so we start with this life, think about how so many other people are kind to us in this life, and then we extrapolate to past lives, and the past life just the same, and then extrapolate to past lives, and past lives just the same, and then gradually all sentient beings have been so kind to me, like these different people in this life. And then, so then in light of that, in recognition of that, seeing how much, sentient beings suffer, and then if we were to just ignore all that, not take that into account, and strive solely for our own freedom from suffering, without the intention to do, to help others, then because we don't recognize others as having been kind to us, because we've forgotten through the force of having died and taken rebirth, right? And then having forgotten how, we were related to them in the past life. Just like when we die away from this life, and all the, friends and family die away from this life, and then we all take rebirth, we won't recognize them. But yet that doesn't change the fact that they were so kind to us. So, so when you see that your relatives are engulfed from past lives, are engulfed in the ocean of cyclic existence, and are as if fallen into a pit of fire, there is nothing more shameful than to work for your own liberation, neglecting those whom you do not recognize due to the process of death and rebirth. The infant on the mother's lap cannot do anything, and suckles, so is helpless, to do much, and suckles milk which flows through love, right? So through the mother's affection, then, the breast milk flows, and then the child is nourished by that, right? So thinking all sentient beings have been similarly kind to us in the past. While through that same love, the mother endures many hardships. So we can just think of our own mother of this life, how many hardships she endures. She has endured to raise us. I know it helped me a lot when my sister gave birth to two children, because I can't remember when I was a little kid at my sister's, shin high. I mean, my mother's kind of knee. One of my aunts told me how one time, aunt in Orange County, actually. And she's passed away now, but she was in Los Angeles. Well, whenever I would visit her, she would always tell me this story how once when I was like, I must have been like 3 or 4, and I had a tantrum, and I was kicking my mother in the shin, like screaming at my mother and kicking her shins. And my aunt thought, oh, this boy's going to grow up to be like a, terrible kid. So she was always surprised. I was one of the, well, of our extended family, one of the only to go to, well, not really. But one of the first in the family of my generation to go to college, because I'm one of the older ones. But anyway, she thought I was a very nice person. I was one of her favorite uh, nephews, I think. But she'd always tell me that story how I was kicking my mother in the shin, and because she would smack her kids, she would like spank her kids and smack them on the cheek or whatever. And my mother would never do that. My parents were totally against any kind of corporal punishment. Um, so they almost never did. But she thought, she couldn't believe my mother. She was very impressed with my mother's patience. I was having a tantrum. So, but when my sister had kids, I see how just like day and night, she's just always, waking up many, many times in the night when the kids wake up, and then feeding them and cleaning them, and then everything is so much time and energy spent like raising kids. It's just like there's a lot of hardship. No? So while through that same love, the mother endures many hardships, who even among those most disreputable wants to leave and abandon those who provided a home, who carefully looked after the child with compassion, and who are afflicted without refuge and suffering. Right. So then you bring those two together, the kindness of your mother, the kindness of others in this life, and how all sentient beings have been similarly kind in past lives. and then how they're suffering, how our mother of this life is suffering, all others who are kind to us in this life are suffering, and how others who have been kind to us in past lives are suffering in different ways. And then naturally we generate a sense of wanting to do something to repay their kindness by helping them, right? So then the next is of this seven causes is love through the force of attraction. So I think there's not much to explain here. This is a nice quote from the King of Concentration Sutra. Always offering to superior beings, means like Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, as many, so making offerings. Always offering to superior beings as many countless offerings as there are in the billions of lands does not equal a portion of the benefit of a loving attitude. So, by meditating on love for even one sentient being, and then more and more, and eventually all sentient beings, the merit we create is is kind of incredibly vast, much more than practicing generosity, making offerings. So, but here, following on, thinking about the kinds of others and how they're suffering, then we generate this mind of love, wishing for them to have well-being and happiness. Again, starting with um, here, usually we start with, in this meditation on bodhicitta, usually we start with a friend or someone we naturally have affinity for, close to, because that's the easiest, and then go to a neutral person, and then go to a stranger. I mean, sorry, and someone, an antagonist or enemy, and then expand to all sentient beings, attitude of love. And then, because yeah, we don't have much time left, I'll just skip to compassion. So that we generate a sense of affectionate love, extended to all sentient beings, get measurable love, and then great compassion. We want to extend to all sentient beings. I don't know why it extends. Can't see the heading there. Anyway, so one very effective way, I think one of the most effective ways to meditate on great compassion is with these two verses from this prayer by Lama Tsongkhapa, the three principal aspects of the path, where he says, so it describes just the kind of suffering that sentient beings are in. It's a very good description of pervasive compounding suffering, right? So he says, swept away by the current of the four powerful rivers. So usually the way to posit the four powerful rivers is birth, old age, sickness, and death. So swept away by the current of the four powerful rivers, tied by tight bonds of karma, so hard to undo. So we create karma and experience the results again and again and again without understanding what's going on, because we don't know about the karma, the law of cause and effect in most rebirths. And then caught in the iron net of self-grasping. So can think selfishness, selfish concern, and then the root of that self-grasping, you know, assuming, having the sense that there is an inherently existent uh, I, self existing from its own side, and then, inherently existent others, and thinking the one is more important than the other, and then all the afflictive emotions coming from that. Completely enveloped by the total darkness of ignorance. Here, the ignorance of like law of cause and effect, the past and future lives of in the Buddhist teachings. Endlessly reborn. So how long does that last? It's endless. It doesn't, as long as we don't um, cut the root of samsara, it goes on forever. So endlessly reborn again and again in samsara and cyclic existence, ceaselessly tormented by the three sufferings. And in all that time, all those rebirths, we have this painful experiences, the suffering of suffering, fundamentally dissatisfying, pleasant experiences, the suffering of change. And then we're just in the state of, where even even when we're not experiencing distorted pleasure or pain, those are just about to arise because we're in the state where it's conducive for those to arise under the control of karma and afflictive emotions, right? A pervasive compounding suffering. So ceaselessly tormented by the three sufferings, thinking that all mothers or all those sentient beings who have been infinitely kind to us from life to life as mothers, fathers, friends, so forth, are in such a condition as this, generate the supreme light, the mind of enlightenment. Um, so then, yeah, compassion, and then the altruism, the wholehearted resolve, or the exceptional intention, right? So this is where we think, okay, again, the first, recognizing all sentient beings have been my kind mother or other grandparents, other relationships have been, and then thinking about how they've been so kind to me in this life and past lives, wishing to repay that kindness. Thinking I must do something to use my life to give back, to benefit them in return, to repay their kindness. And then thinking, love, may they have, infinite well-being and happiness. And then thinking about that compassion, recognizing they have so many problems, so much difficulty, so much suffering, um, and wishing to, that they be free from all this suffering, especially the suffering of being trapped in samsara through the force of ignorance, right? And then thinking, okay, not only is it would be nice, and I wish that they have that, but it's up to me to do something about it. So here, that's this altruism or wholehearted resolve, exceptional intention. I myself, it's my responsibility. Especially, it's easy to think in relation to the ones that our parents or the people we're close to in this life, our partners, our children, you know, our close friends. Think I have responsibility. But similarly, all sentient beings have again been in those relationships with us, so it's my responsibility to do whatever I can to free all sentient beings from every form of suffering and establish them in every form of well-being and happiness. Um, so that's this sixth cause. And then out of that, then we think, okay, what's the best way to do that? Is to, who can most effectively or what kind of being can most effectively work for the welfare of all sentient beings and establish them in a kind of well-being that's not just temporary, not just adventitious, that doesn't just disappear, at the time of death, but is irreversible, is a long-term, stable, lasting well-being and happiness. It's only a Buddha, a fully enlightened being, can do that. So therefore, I must become enlightened in order to accomplish the welfare of all sentient beings. So there we're at Bodhichitta, the result. So just, yeah, there's just one more slide here, then we're finished with this topic for today. Um, So as I mentioned before, there's two ways of grouping the causes and effects. So the first is like we've just described, where 1 through 6 are causes of 7. Um, right. So I'll just here where they're numbered. So where the first 6, 1 through 6 here, are causes of bodhicitta. That's the way I just described. And another way is, yeah, is where the causes, they're all causes and effects of compassion, right? Where compassion is central. Um, So compassion is fifth here, right? So where the first 4, um, understanding sentient beings to be our mother, remembering their kindness, wishing to repay their kindness, and then love through the force of attraction, or it's more like through the force of affection, having an affectionate love, feeling close to sentient beings, are causes of generating great compassion, and then great compassion that motivates this wishing to do something to benefit them and wishing to achieve enlightenment. So that, yeah, so again, I'll send out this outline afterwards. So that's the kind of presentation of the sevenfold cause and effect method for generating bodhicitta. Sorry, we don't have time to meditate on it or have discussion about it today. But if there's, I don't know, 1 or 2 questions I could answer. Okay, otherwise the homework is so mainly meditate, try to meditate on these different stages. I think you all know quite well how to meditate now on these topics. So just take, yeah, again with equanimity, and then I mean actually, Lobong Rinpoche adds, you know, makes it 8 stages, adds equanimity first, and then these 7 steps, and that is the way kind of to meditate. So begin with equanimity, and then think, go over the reasoning. All sentient beings have been your mother. That's the most controversial reasoning in the whole thing, right? You have to question that. Have all sentient beings, been my mother, father, friend? How does that make sense or not make sense for oneself? Um, you know, see how you kind of relate to that reasoning. Well, because it also relates to have I actually had infinite past lives or not? It's another big question, right? So, yeah, spend some time working with that one. Um, but then from the second one on, I think it's quite straightforward. Thinking about how others have been kind to us, wishing to generating wish, and then generating a sense of gratitude, wishing to repay their kindness. Um, yeah, then generating love, compassion, and then there's altruistic intention, and then bodhicitta. Yeah. So just spend some time going through steps. You might take like one session on each step first, and then combine them, or combine the first three together, and then compassion and love and compassion together, and then altruistic intention and bodhicitta together. But spend time, take some time to go through each. But to really spend the time you need, you won't be able to go through all 7 steps in one session, right? To be able to get to the point where you can comfortably meditate on all 7 steps, and effectively it moves your in a way that moves your mind. Just in one half hour session, you have to spend time on each individually first. Right? Okay, let's just briefly dedicate then. Um, so think of your original motivation for that you generated to engage in this session. And then we can pray that by whatever virtuous karma, or positive energy, merit we've created through this session, that may that original motivation be fulfilled, that original intention fulfilled. And then in short, may all sentient beings everywhere, especially those that we're most, you know, aware of, um, those we know personally, or we hear about and see in our communities, in our world. May they be free from all forms of suffering, especially from sickness, drug addiction, loneliness, depression, suffering of anger, and suffering of violence, whether it's domestic violence or on the scale of war between countries like in Ukraine or Syria or Yemen and other places. That kind of all these different kinds of violence quickly come to an end. May the minds of hatred be completely eliminated and replaced with minds of love and compassion. May beings have every form of well-being and happiness, from food, clothing, companionship, education, wisdom, up to and all the realizations on the path to enlightenment. And may all our own actions contribute to these aims from day to day, hour to hour. And then may all of our teachers, His Holiness the Dalai Lama and others, have long and stable lives, and all their holy wishes be fulfilled. And may the Buddha's teachings and other spiritual teachings that unmistakably contribute to the welfare of beings flourish and remain for a long time. And then add any other prayers you'd like to make, bring them to mind. So may those your own prayers be fulfilled in accordance with your wishes. Okay, thank you all, and I'll see you in 2 weeks. Okay, take care,
Thank you so
children.
much.
Thank you, Lekzak.
Thank you.
Thank you, Venerable Let's Mary Ellen and Rose.